So, on a previous video, I talked about chaotic coronavirus news coverage by the corporate establishment, Disserves public, and the local journalists. And I want to follow up on that with a part two today because there is so much more to be said. And I also got the chance to do an interview for my broadcasters podcast that I thought I wanted to go ahead and pull the clip early so I can go and play for everybody just because of the timeliness of the subject and the debate that we had, which is a good, strong, healthy debate which I think really encompasses all different areas of what the conversation is about. So I want to take a story that I got from foreignpolicy.com. And this is what was being brought. I won't do that first. Let me go and do this. I got to do a little plug. I don't do it much, but I'll do it right here. Kingofamazon.com. So this is where you go to Amazon. I have Amazon all the time. I go buy from whatever I need. And look, you're not going to be able to find sanitizer. You're not going to be able to find toilet paper, of course, but there's going to be a lot of things that you will need. And, when you're having the trouble, try to go ahead and go to the stores now with lines to find things. And you want to go and do some bulk buying. You might not want to go buy at the wholesale club, but also you want to try to keep yourself quarantined. Amazon will take care of that for you. Of course, they do great delivery, same day delivery in some cases, 2-day delivery if you're Amazon Prime customer, of which I've been since 2017. And also Amazon Prime, you can buy it for that. You can also sign up for Audible. So many different things you can do. But if you go for Audible, you know what Audible does. And they're there for you to go ahead and ship whatever they're going to get to you. But you can also help out through my special link, kingofamazon.com. Some of the funds I normally would get because I would be on the road and be able to do my hustle. Well, some of my hustle's gone, so I have to go and rely a little more on the internet and more on my content to try to bring in some more funds to replace what I have. And what I also want to do is, do the same for others out there to be able to go make donations and also just offer to the cause. And I want to be able to do that. I hope you'll definitely consider going to kingofamazon.com. Kingofamazon.com. That is my special link so that when you go to Amazon to go buy and do your shopping, then a percentage of the commission is going to actually go to me. It's like I'm a salesperson selling for Amazon, and I'm just saying, hey, come on in, buy some stuff on Amazon, and buy what you need. Only what you need, only what you want. And then I make a commission. Just as simple as that. So a little affiliate link, just like that. I set that up. I hope you'll consider it. Kingofamazon.com. Again, kingofamazon.com, because King of Podcasts shops there. All right. So like I said, I talked about this story earlier this week as I record this interview now, or this show now, and I'm going to play you a portion of the interview from my broadcasters podcast. We're going to just take about a good 15-minute clip, or actually it's 11 minutes. That's right. And it's good. Like the conversation I have is very prominent. I'll tell you who the guest is in just a moment. Let me go to the story I brought up as part of the interview that I did earlier today as I'm recording right now. From foreignpolicy.com, I just pulled out the print version so it'd be easier to go and read. So the internet broke the news industry and can fix it too. This is a story back from October 19, 2019. It still fits today. And by the way, this website is non-biased. It is straight down the middle. It talks about international and world politics and just also includes the U.S. So they talk about the story right here, which is very interesting and still fits for today. And I've prefaced this already on my broadcasters podcast twice. I figured I'd put on when I'm not podcasting in a video this time around. So when pollsters ask Americans when they trust whether they trust the news they read, listen to, or watch, the answer is increasingly negative. Sentiment is in fact now common all over the world. We've talked about that. Okay, you know this already. Now, the one thing that's holding on right now that is the full crux of why the news is doing what they're doing right now is, the new world's new digital and highly competitive media environment has created fundamental problems in the business models that journalism relies on. Print products are in terminal decline. Television audiences are plummeting. This is a different story now because of the coronavirus. Everybody's really concerned about it. So now you're seeing a lot more people talking, and they're taking time to go ahead and promote. And if they can make some advertising out of that, they'll find whatever advertising they can. But the most important thing is the panic. The history that's being made is to keep viewers tuned in. As for me, I don't watch any of that news. I try to avoid anything that's on television because I even told in an interview earlier, and I think it might be in here, about the fact that, I do not need to have anybody reinterpret the press briefings of Governor Cuomo, Governor Newsom, the president, and his coronavirus task force. I don't need any of that. I can go watch it by myself. If I want opinions, there's loads of opinions to go for. And honestly, I don't want to watch what's on television because those are people that are, part attached into the bureaucratic system, part of the incestual Washington, D.C. narrative, whether it's whichever side of the aisle. Okay. All of them are in the tank. Let's just say it like that. They all have their hands out looking for money. So there is an agenda by that. There's bias across the board, as far as I'm concerned. So I go to grassroots people that are not getting uptake from this. They're just trying to make money off of online, YouTube creators or people that are just, reporters that are just grassroots and investigative and really going into the granularity of the stories. I'm going to people like that to learn about the stories because I'm getting more information and getting more proactive information, which then gets later reported to network and national news. And I'm like, all of a sudden, oh, we just learned about this. What? I learned about it 3-4 days ago. Where have you been? And that's where I'm coming from. So now advertising around news is no longer attractive when internet giants like Google, Facebook, and Amazon offer far more effective ways to target consumers. So this is what's going on, and this is what's going on right now. We're seeing it from the websites as well. There's nationally, corporate-owned websites that are doing digital media, news media, and they're also doing the same thing. New financial realities have led many of these organizations to adopt problematic techniques for survival. And they're trying to do right now, survive. It's stories like this kind of news cycle that will never end, that will go for months and months on end. They look for stories like this and really brutally just exploit the hell out of this. That's what they try to do. I know it because I've been in the media and I've seen what TV news and I've seen what newspapers and radio have done in order to go ahead and exploit and bastardize the story for their own benefit instead of serving the public. And that's what's most important to me. And that's what I talk about in the interview. I'll bring that up in just a minute. I'll play it for you in just a second. So now, the running so-called clickbait headlines. Each of these developments combined with a track of transparency with the news organizations and the increased use of unfiltered social media platforms as news sources contributes to a further drop in trust of the media. So now the internet has also interrupted and disrupted traditional media. It presents several ways to fix it. And this is where social media can bring local communities back into journalism. Transparency, accountability, accuracy, quality. Asking the 5 questions: who, what, when, where, and why. Now, I want to go ahead and play for you an interview that I did earlier today as I'm recording this show. And it's with Kristen Pope. She's an award-winning broadcast journalist and the CEO of Pope Productions. On a future episode of the Broadcasters Podcast, I will play for all of you. If you subscribe to the show, make sure to go look for it, broadcasterspodcast.com. From there, you can go ahead and check it out for yourself. I'll just pull up the website real quick so you can all check it for yourself. Broadcasterspodcast.com, because from there, you can then go ahead and check out all the episodes that I've done, 115 so far. And this episode with Kristen Pope will probably be, I want to say it's going to be late April, early May. I have done 4 interviews. We're just putting the 2 parts. So it'll be running later in the month of April as you catch the show. So you'll be able to go and catch it there. So again, let me go and play for you a clip from my interview with Kristen Pope on the Broadcasters Podcast. Enjoy. In a journalistic sense, I want things reported right. I want who, what, when, where, and why to be questions asked on the news front. Opinion editorial should be clearly defined and identified on the other side. But do you see at any point at all, do you think there is a little bit of collusion where that is getting mixed up right now, that we're not seeing a clear opinion editorial and news in our news coverage?
Well, opinion editorial and news coverage is a bit different, pure by the fact that we're saying opinion. What we need at this time, there are a lot of op-eds being printed, as they should be, because it gives perspective and people are living it in real time. But at the same time, you need facts. You need the facts, and I absolutely want to see my local news. And then I want to see the national news too, because I know that the national news is going to talk about some things that the local news won't talk about. They're going to talk about it, from a wider umbrella. But do you need your local news 150%? Because I need to know and especially because, I know you don't want to get political, but we're not handling this on a worldwide federal level. There's not some federal stay in shelter. It's by your state's locality, sometimes by your city. So we need for the journalists to be out there getting the facts on every locality.
So, Kristen, we talked about trust. That what you mentioned it just as we were still talking about this. So, I want to refer to a story that I brought back from last October. I talked to another guest about this, and she worked in health science reporter for local and national television. Foreignpolicy.com wrote a story, and this is what was asked. And this is, again, where there should be trust, but let's be honest, the public we're seeing in polling is not seeing that, is not offering that kind of trust. They're losing. There's a lack of trust. So pollsters have asked Americans whether they trust the news they read, listen to, or watch. The answer is increasingly negative. And the sentiment is, in fact, common now all over the world. Growing rates of global internet access have made countless sources of information readily available, but with a few checks and balances and widely varying levels of credibility. Unprecedented access to all kinds of media has not only increased competition among news providers, but it has also led to the extreme proliferation of low quality yet plausible looking sources of information, making it easier for political players to manipulate public opinion and to do so while denigrating established news brands. No disrespect to journalists in general, of which there are some that are very honorable in their work and should be given their respect. I'm saying that out front, disclaiming myself. But Kristen, should we be starting to dissuade the public from consuming mainstream media when all they do for the most part is they're putting out attention bait or clickbait?
Absolutely not. I think that's very, very dangerous to dissuade people from the mainstream media, because most of what we're consuming is fact checked. Most of it, I mean, I haven't worked in the news media, know that most of it is being sourced, most of it is being checked against, 2 and 3 times. But to dissuade people from it, I think is very dangerous, because you have all of these other sources that are not fact checked.
But what about the fact we have sources that many times, I can't mention how many times I see it, but how many times do we have to have an anonymous source that cannot disclose anything more? And we can't, and they might be fact checked according to the internal source there, that reporter, that journalist, that outlet, but they're anonymous. And that's happening too much. That was a thing where National Enquirer would say a pal would do this and this or say this and this. But then again, it's insubstantiated, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it's unsubstantiated necessarily. I don't, I prefer to stay away from a story where you can't name the person, or, but in times like this where people are concerned for their jobs, and we have to put it into context. When we say many times, what does that mean? When we say anonymous source, what is the context of that? I used to go to Black neighborhoods where the young men could have helped to uncover the answer to a story, but they didn't want to get on air because they always felt like, listen, they might be targeted against, depending on a particular neighborhood and things like that. And so, there is some distrust of the media, absolutely, but I do think we have to put it in context. And I don't think it's helpful that you have a president who is always calling out fake news.
Okay.
I mean, that's just the reality. Like, we may not get into a political conversation, but you cannot have this conversation without addressing that. I'm watching on television as he's berating the members of the news media, Yamiche Alcindor, he's berating her, he's berating other people. I mean, how are American people, if the president of the United States would do something like that, why wouldn't we have a movement or a culture shift where people don't trust the news?
But see, I don't know. I think the focus is too ultra. I think it's too ultra focused on the president is what I think. I'm worried about what the CDC is doing. I'm worried about the FDA. I'm worried about what the National Institute of Health. I'm worried about what the World Health Organization is doing. We're talking about a diplomatic leader. And listen, I mean, regardless, things are being done. I mean, I think we can at least agree there are things that are being done. We're seeing hospitals, the military hospitals that have been shipped to Los Angeles and New York City, where we're seeing multiple field hospitals being built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has come in to fortify, numerous beds. Ventilators are being shipped and processed and manufactured. The efforts are being made regardless of what is being said by the person at the top. I just think I think that ultra hyper focus on the president and every word that he says, regardless of what he's saying and if it's credible or not, I think that takes away from everything else. Don't you think?
I think it actually is dangerous if you can't trust what the president's saying and you have to dumb down the power of his word. I think that's dangerous, because if that means that his words are now invalid or are now, we shouldn't, maybe we shouldn't pay so much attention to him. Like, what world are we living in when the president of the United States' words and voice do not carry substantial weight? that's a problem.
But as a journalist,
So
are you hearing more people telling you this is what they want to hear? They would rather hear about what the president is not saying or is saying incorrectly, as opposed to finding out if my local Walmart, if Walmart's all over the country, if employees are going to get hazard pay, or if the stores are going to be open, if the supply chains are still rampant and all supplies can be made available, so essential items can be made to the rest of the country. Wouldn't that be more important story? I think the focus, that's what I'm saying. The focus, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any focus on the president. I just think the focus of the stories should be much more on everything else. There's 90% of the more things more important than the president, in my opinion.
this is why we have to keep it in context. The damage of the president had been done for years. He's been in that position for 3 years. We're just now talking about the coronavirus. President Trump has been lambasting the news for years. So now you do that, you tear down a whole institution, and then when we need the news to inform us of what's going on, now nobody trusts it. Now we're questioning it. But that damage had already been done.
But how does that help people that are looking to find jobs or that are unemployed now and looking for the next paycheck? I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, I'm being sincere about this. What does what the president say have to do with what people are suffering with day to day right now at their kitchen table?
It should have everything to do with it. He should be doing everything he can. Every word that comes out of his mouth should be to the benefit and to the help of the United States of America's people. Every word that he says. But if the words are contrary to that, then, where do you look? I guess you just look to your local government. And that's a good thing. You need to have a great relationship with your local government. But if the words coming out of the president's mouth don't help the situation, don't make you feel any more secure if he's the one who's running the country, that's a problem.
Okay. Let's stop for a second. Only because I know that my next few questions are going to be I'm going to still keep going, but the thing is, if you don't feel, my thing is just, I like the healthy debate. That's fine. But I also feel like I don't want to make it where, like, if you feel like there's a point where if I'm asking questions and you feel like that, you don't feel good about what I'm asking you, I don't want to go ahead and hold you to these questions. If it's not, I appreciate you answering, but it's just, my whole thing is I'm trying to keep this away from being political. And I feel like it is. And I don't want it to be that way. And I want to just be able to have it where we could talk more about journalism itself and not go into a part about the president. Like, I know everybody wants to go to that route, and I appreciate where you're coming from. I really do. But my whole thing is, I don't want to be, I'm trying to avoid that discussion. Do you see where I'm coming from?
I do, but some of your questions, it's inevitable. The first thing you talked about was the fourth estate of democracy. That's a government. We're talking about things that are, that's a federal government discussion. The free press is a constitutional right. That's a political question.
Anybody can say what they want.
Let's just be straight up now. That's a political question. If you ask me about the free press, which is the constitutional right, that's a political question.
But politics don't need to be a part of this, a part of journalism. But politics is a section of journalism, not the overall factor. I'm going to say I can appreciate where you're coming from when it comes in regards to the fourth estate and when it comes to what our national leaders, how they respond and how they are, and based on all past history of any administration. Okay. But my thing is just that I am afraid that politics are becoming way too entrenched into everything that's being done into journalism. I think there's issues from my end, I am trying to go, in defense of content creators, of journalists like you. My thing is, I want things to be done so that everything is cleared away for the lack of, so if there is political correctness that become part of the narrative of any particular news or information or entertainment or what have you. If there's issues where, social justice or just, race, diversity, equality, inclusion, I support all those areas, and maybe I just support them differently than others. But I think politics are getting infiltrated way too much into our journalism. And that's where I'm coming from with that. that's why I really appreciate you coming on. Obviously, it's a healthy debate that we should have, but
Yeah.
we might have some differing opinions, and that's okay. So I want to bring another point across to you. And honestly, like I said, I think you got very strong opinions, and I appreciate that. I really do. I'm going to go and keep going here. Another point from foreignpolicy.org, which I believe is bipartisan. I don't think there's any particular slant to them at all. But there's a point that I want to mention that bears repeating again. And this is something I really do believe in. I just want to get what you think of this yourselves.
Mhm.
So the world's, quote, new digital and highly competitive media environment has created fundamental problems in the business models that journalism relies on. Print products are in terminal decline. Television audiences are plummeting. Advertising around news is no longer attractive when internet giants like Google, Facebook, and Amazon offer far more effective ways to target consumers. These new financial realities have led many news organizations to adopt problematic techniques for survival, prioritizing quantity over quality and running so-called clickbait headlines. Each of these developments, combined with a lack of transparency with the news organizations and the increased use of unfiltered social media platforms as news sources, contributes to a further drop in the trust in media. As we're recording in this coronavirus outbreak, are you concerned at all about the amount of hysteria and misinformation that might be being reported by some fellow journalists at the behest of their superiors?
Yes. And by that, I mean, I am concerned about moving too quick, moving too fast. I think in a lot of ways, sometimes news organizations unfortunately prioritize first versus right because they have to stay on top of the very fast news cycle, and they're competing, like you said, against social media and other tools and techniques. So that is concerning. And because this information is life or death for people, it has to be right. And the truth of the matter is it matters more to be right than it does to be first.
One other point I want to make from this foreign policy article is called "The Internet Broke the News Industry and Can Fix It Too." So again, more constructive, less critical. That's what I'm always about. Quote, "The first priority of any news outlet must be the quality and credibility of its journalistic work. Those that depend on advertising only business models may find it hard to sustain this priority. Eventually, a push for more traffic and therefore revenue will conflict with the mission of high quality and reliable journalism." So what should journalists say to their superiors? What should be done to curb this clickbait issue? Because what does need to be done? Because you acknowledge as well, there is some distrust by the public. What can be done to turn this around? Because whatever's being done right now, there's a slippery slope.
You're right. And I do believe that reporters need more editorial control over their stories. I believe, and that has to be part of the person and when they're hired. Journalists need more editorial control.
Now, editorial control, do you mean more in terms of being able to inject opinion or being able to diversify what stories they report on that are more important to the public?
Well, not necessarily opinion. I want to stay away from that because opinion and fact are two different things. Definitely for more diversity for what news gets pushed out, that's for certain. But also to be able to raise their voice and say, hey, I think we need to do this different. Hey, I think we need to push back on this. Hey, this angle isn't showing up. Maybe we should change it to this, and be supported and be trusted by their news organization. I think that is extremely important.
This is a tough subject to talk about. And this is not an easy subject to talk about. It's not something that's going to get corrected overnight. I totally understand that. But I've seen this change. And the internet's really, it's the disruption of the media itself because the internet has changed everything. I think the foreign policy article says exactly that. It has affected every portion of media in different ways. And it's amazing to see that. But, one of the things that should not change, but I don't know, just overall, I just think what foreign policy said is not that far off. I just think that there are certain things where money is getting in the way of accurate journalism. Because, for me, I started in the radio, and I know, I wasn't in it to make a whole lot of money. I just knew that it was a place to be theater of the mind. I could be informative, educational, or, entertaining at all the same time. And it was some place where you could really build your craft and be something more. And news, I also appreciated the same way, writing for newspapers and working for TV news. I can appreciate what we're doing, but I also knew that, I would be contentious with the producers because I'm like, because the news director has a different agenda. I'm like, why are we doing these stories? Why are we doing this? And why are we being lazy about it? And I'm not saying everybody does
Mm-hmm.
it. I'm not saying you do, but there are not enough investigative journalists out there. There are not enough reporters that have the resources, the wherewithal to go out and find the story, not take Twitter feeds and report it as news. That is not serving the public to me. I keep hammering that, and I can't help it. It does bother me. I really appreciate what she said and the sentiments being made. Trust her opinion. I mean, I value her opinion. And it's good, healthy debate that we should have by all. And most importantly, we need to see when I'm talking about her being, having been a local journalist for News 12 Westchester in Westchester County in New York, just outside of New York City, about an hour's away. Honestly, what I learned from all that's going on here, it's really more important than ever to talk about local journalists and look at what the local news is doing for you as opposed to looking for the national aspect. Because if you're looking for the national aspect, I would not trust what I'm watching on TV or cable. If it's being transmitted through airways, I'm not watching it. If it's going through a cable box, I'm not watching it. Because I don't need my opinion to be deviated by people that are not in the public interest. And also people that are in an echo chamber, in a glass bubble, in a glass tower, that do not know anything about the middle of America, that do not anything to know about, just everyday life. They're so privileged. They're so, coddled. That's what's the most important thing. And these are people that cannot relate to you, but there are content creators like myself. I think I can be a little more relatable. I mean, listen, I'm kind of the blue collar kind of guy, fraternizing and networking with white collar people for the last, 25 years. I came from a small town. And when I look at what's going on here, journalism was a different story, back in the 90s when I was growing into it, coming out of college, and it just changed. And for whatever reason, the internet has made it where, no, don't get me wrong. There are people that are doing this where they want to go and try to get themselves out there to be seen and noticed for what they're doing. And I get why they're doing it. But for me, I just don't like any of this. I don't like what's being happening right now in my journalism because you're taking away the opportunity for real journalism to happen. The thing is, social media and the internet will allow certain people, if they're being funded, if they're being supported, we can get better information. And one thing I don't think I mentioned here with Kristen in the interview was the fact that I would wish that the NPR, the government funded radio stations, NPR, PBS, would partner up even more if they haven't already with the local newspapers and the local news outlets to get more information out there. Give them more airtime, give them more time for public affairs service. Do that because they need to be in the public interest. And journalism needs to be in the public interest. You want to monetize it, that's one thing. You want to do opinion editorial, go right ahead. But the truth is, we do not need the news like it's being presented as it has been for years because it was a different medium. But now we can watch and consume our media a different way. Internet is the way to go. Social media is the way to go. That's what we're doing. So you're watching a video like this here. So I'll leave it at that. Talk to you the next time. And thanks for listening to When I'm Not Podcasting or watching it. And of course, please go and subscribe. Hit the button so you can go and catch a new video. And please send subscribers over. I would love to go and have some more people to come on. Please comment in the video in the description here. And I'd love to go and hear what you think about all this.